Hi there! Welcome to my series of YouTube tutorials, games to play during piano lessons. This is game number 6 called Piano Geography. This game helps the students to make sense of all this huge piano keyboard as a map of countries, let's say, which sometimes I like to describe the octaves as countries, and the different keys as the citizens that live in that country. So you introduce semitones, so that then later on you can introduce sharps and flats, so that you can name the black keys, which unfortunately don't have their own names, and they are named with the help of the white keys plus those two symbols, and the name of each octave, so that they also can already orient themselves and be very specific on the keys that they're playing or they're listening to, so that you don't have these generated answers as the middle keys, or this sounds high, this sounds low. Yes, but how high, how low, which kind of instruments would play that high or not so high or somewhere in the middle? Let's be more specific. Now, semitones, the smallest distance between two keys on the piano. No other key can fit in between. It can be either between two white keys or a white and a black. And then you can throw in the symbols of sharps and flats. What does a sharp do? It makes a key go higher by a semitone, and the flat makes a key go lower by a semitone. And again, how do we name the black keys? With the help of their neighbor white keys, by adding sharps or flats. We'll see all this in a minute on the piano. Now, again, it's very important, and I also emphasize this from the beginning, to mention to your students that sharps and flats are not only black keys. Also white keys can be named with the help of sharps and flats. And that each key can have two different names. Or three, but let's not get into double sharps and flats. Let's make it simple and only use one sharp or one flat. And you can give an example, like I like to ask my students, what is your nickname? How do your friends call you? Or how does your mom call you? And they will give me 2 or 3 different names. And I ask them, okay, but if I call you with your nickname, Nick or Nicholas, like your mother calls you, aren't you still the same person? Aren't you going to answer? Yes. So it's the same thing with the keys. We name them with 2 different names, but they still sound the same, and you still have to play a very specific key on the piano keyboard. Let's say, for instance, F sharp or G flat. Or with white keys, F, an F key, or E sharp. And after this I give several examples. I ask them to play different keys or give 2 different names from each key. And after this is done, I'm playing 4 or 5 different, let's say, C keys from different octaves. I still don't mention that name. And I ask my student to describe with their own words what do they think is the difference between those 4 or 3 or 5 different regions or countries that I'm playing the same key. Let them answer and think by themselves. They will answer maybe with an example of an animal. This sounds like an elephant if I play something lower. Or they will say something like, this sounds fatter or scarier. And then with that example you can add or ask them to name the higher pitches. And then you can start introducing by naming specifically, depending on the system that you use. I use the Helmholtz, but I will give these examples in the American system. And name specifically each octave or each country and the citizens, the keys that live in that country, that can have also different names. So, about the game. You play against your student. For each incorrect answer from your student, you get a point. and they only get to give you one answer. You can start with easier keys, you can start with white keys and like use the middle section if they remember that it's the fourth octave there, or if they remember better the first octave, you can play in the first octave, some easy key. And then for additional points, you can ask them for that specific key that you played to give a second name. And then you can reverse the game. After 4 to 6 points, you can reverse it by asking your student a specific key from a specific octave and for them to find it on the piano. If they find it correctly, you give them the point. If they find only correctly the key but not the octave, that point is yours. Be very specific with your direction so that you make sure that your student after this game can orientate themselves on the piano, because it's huge. It's a very big piano keyboard, and it's better for them to make sense for it in the beginning and not be chaotic about it or generalize like, okay, I'm playing somewhere here in the middle or somewhere here on top or on the bottom. Now, let's see all those things on the piano. So again, let's remind, what is a semitone? It's the smallest distance between two keys. No other key can fit in between. E and F. Or F and F sharp. Now we are starting to name the black keys with the help of sharps and flats. Or F sharp and G. Or G flat and G. No other key can fit in between, so that's a half step or a semitone. So now we have the names of the white keys, C, D, E, F, G, A, B. And now let's name all the black keys with the help of the sharps and flats, now that we know what a half step or a semitone is. C and C sharp makes the key go higher by half a step. Then C sharp or and D. D, D sharp. Now let's move on to this black key. F, F sharp. G, G sharp. A, A sharp. Now let's reverse it with flats. Let's give it two names. This can also be named either C sharp with the help of C or with this neighbor D, but what? D flat, because it goes down. Again, remind your students, since our piano keyboard is not vertical but it's horizontal, that going up means to go on my right, going down means to go on my left. And you can also play for them to understand. If I go on my left, the pitches are becoming darker and lower and fatter. Or if I go up, or on my right, the pitches become higher. Then move on to the next black key. Ask your student to give you two names for this key. It's either D sharp or E flat, because the flat makes the key go lower. Same thing for those three black keys. And now again, mention and emphasize that also white keys can have two names, and sharps and flats are not only black keys. Let's say, take for instance F key. This is F, but it also can have a nickname, E sharp. You can either draw it, if you already shown to your students how to draw the keys, or you can just show them on the piano and ask them, if I name this F or E sharp, will it change the result that they have to play? No, I still have to play this key and it will still sound with this pitch specific. Now let's try this key, the B. What other name can I give it? C flat. Whether I name it B or I name it C flat, I still have to play the same key on the piano and it will sound the same. And now let's give names to our octaves. I'm going to use the American system. Unfortunately, I can only name the first 4 to 5 octaves because my mobile device cannot film the whole piano keyboard. So let's start. Our first octave are all the white keys, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, plus the black ones. And all this region, all this country, is called the first octave. Then second octave, third octave, fourth octave, and a little bit of fifth octave. Here I'm gonna play it all, but you're gonna see only half of the fifth octave. And before you start the game, you can ask your student to play, let's say, play me an F from the third octave. So 1, 2, 3. They first have to find the country and then the key, C, D, E, F. This is an F from the third octave. Or they can firstly find the key and then the octave, the country, but this is going to be a little bit trickier because again, after they find the country, their eyes may lose the key that they found, so they again have to find it. After the country, they find the citizen. And then additionally, you can ask them to give a second name for this citizen, for this person, for this key. How else can I name it besides F, E sharp? And then you start the game by counting points. Let's say you play for them this key, and you ask them to name it. They can name either the key first or the octave. That doesn't make any difference if you play this with this order. So, first octave, second octave. So the country is second octave, and the key is, let's say it's located close to this white key, C, D, E, F, G sharp. So this is a G sharp from the second octave. You give 4 to 6 examples like that by you playing and your students guessing, and the key and the octave, and then you reverse it. You ask them to play, okay, play for me D sharp from the fourth octave. They will find either first the octave and then the key, or reversely, C, D, D sharp. The sharp makes the key go higher by a semitone. The flat would make it go lower. This is D sharp from the fourth octave. This is D flat. And after they played it, if you want to add an additional point, you ask them to give it a second name. This key can have another name besides D sharp. It can be named also as E flat. And lastly, you can use this game to introduce new instruments to your students that they have never heard of. You can first ask them to see their knowledge, how many different instruments they can recognize, and the pitches that they could play with. Like you play in the lower octaves and you ask your student, what kind of instruments do you think would sound so low? They will, no student is ever going to tell you that a violin would play so low. Or if you play higher pitches, they will most definitely mention the flute or the violin. And then you can introduce new instruments and show them on your mobile device so that they can also see visually and acoustically. Let's say for a tuba, you make them listen to a tuba and also see it. And then you ask them, do you think a tuba could play keys like are located in the 6th or 7th octave? Your student will already know the answer now that they have this acoustical identification of what a tuba sounds like. So, have a good trip on your piano geography game, and I'll see you on my next game video.